terapi tu dia targeted kan. Dia macam you kena tahu apa you punya goal bila you buat terapi tu. It's not just about okay kita buatlah sebab nampak dekat dalam YouTube untuk anak macam ni, parents ada terapis yang buat macam ni. So kita pun buat, and then kita claim saya buat terapi untuk anak saya. So it's not the same sebab dia tak spesifik kan.
The word therapy is overused, similar to a lot of other words in the mental health capacity. Words like depression, OCD, we tend to use them very loosely.
Anxiety.
Tetapi these are all clinical diagnosis sebenarnya when you talk about depression, OCD, anxiety kan.
Daripada tahap yang dicapai, the child can take it on. It's like you've given them wings and then they fly and they don't come back. But otherwise, the wings, I would like to use an analogy, the wings sometimes get injured. So they need a bit more healing and a bit more therapy to allow them to heal and to put them back on track. Hello, selamat sejahtera. Hari ini kami di Kita Family kembali semula dengan episod ke-26. Dengan saya pada hari ini adalah Didi dari Kota Kinabalu. Hai Didi.
Hai, Assalamualaikum.
Dan Desiree di studio.
Hai, selamat sejahtera.
Seperti biasa, kami di Kita Family ini akan membincangkan perihal yang berkaitan dengan makna serta kepentingan hidup bermasyarakat, menghargai keunikan serta kepelbagaian sesama kita dan meraihkan masyarakat yang berbilang kaum, kepercayaan, rupa dan juga keupayaan. Kita menghargai hidup secara inklusif yang mengambil kira keperluan segenap lapisan masyarakat, terutama bagi mereka yang kurang atau kelainan upaya. So we're back today with a new episode. Episod pada hari ini adalah episod yang lain sikit kerana kami di Kita Family sering mendapat feedback dan juga sering berjumpa dengan parent lain yang mempunyai anak neurodivergent. Dan ada perbincangan-perbincangan yang kami rasa perlu dikemukakan dan dibincang di atas forum ini untuk memberi manfaat kepada masyarakat umum. So for that, we are going to discuss something that we've always heard in private or discussed in private without naming any names, but just the discussion so that there's a key takeaway message. So ini juga kami juga akan digelar sebagai chit-chat mak-mak, pak-pak neurodivergent. But because we are all mothers, so kita jadikan mak-mak.
Yalah, mak-mak.
So hari ini dengan chit-chat mak-mak neurodivergent ni, saya akan bermula dengan mengingatkan bahawa pada episod yang lepas, Didi, SK dan Desiree telah membincangkan dengan terperinci kenapa seseorang itu perlu mendapat diagnosis dan assessment. Dan dalam perbincangan itu, kami juga telah membentangkan bahawa support adalah memang satu yang perlu diberi kepada setiap anak, walaupun neurodivergent ataupun tidak.
Betul.
So, adakah semua anak perlu ada terapi ataupun intervention ataupun support? Saya mulakan dengan soalan ini dijawab oleh Didi.
Okay, thank you Anit. Terapi tu sendiri sebenarnya bermaksud rawatan. Jadi sebenarnya tak semua orang perlukan terapi sebab kalau kita tak ada masalah kesihatan, tak ada masalah dari segi perkembangan, jadi kita tidak perlukan terapi. Tapi ia tidak bermakna kalau kita tak ada diagnosis, kita tak perlukan terapi. Maksudnya kita confirm memang tak ada diagnosis, jadi tak ada diagnosis tak boleh pergi terapi. Sebab ada ketikanya kita mempunyai masalah-masalah yang boleh dibantu oleh terapi. Sebab kita nak dapatkan diagnosis tu kita ada banyak kriteria kan, ada beberapa yang you perlu score lah kan. Jadi ada ketikanya masalah yang dihadapi tu, isu yang ada tidak cukup untuk membuatkan seseorang tu dapat diagnosis. Tapi masalah tu
Ya.
still ada kan. Jadi dengan pergi ke terapi, dengan bantuan juruterapi, kita dapat membantu seseorang itu untuk mengatasilah masalah yang dihadapi. Ini termasuklah dari segi, masalah pembelajaran ke, masalah, dari segi kemahiran. Contoh kalau ada apa, kemahiran menulis, kemahiran membaca, mungkin ada
Ya.
ketikanya sesetengah kanak-kanak tu dia perlukan sedikit nudge, sedikit bantuan daripada terapi untuk membolehkan dia develop, dalam level yang sesuai untuk umur dia. So sebab tu sebenarnya macam you ada diagnosis ke, you tak ada diagnosis ke, tapi kalau you ada masalah, you boleh rujuklah dengan juruterapi, rujuk dengan doktor untuk, melihat sama ada keperluan atau tidak untuk pergi ke terapi.
So Didi, adakah macam kalau anak-anak yang bukan neurodivergent, mereka tak
Mhm.
faham satu konsep, dia hantar pergi tuition. Adakah itu juga sebahagian daripada intervensi? Bukannya terapi, tapi intervensi.
Mhm. Um,
Kerana ada yang mempunyai kemahiran dalam bahasa Malaysia, ada yang mempunyai kemahiran dalam bahasa Inggeris, tapi dengan sains lemah. Tapi
hmm.
kalau dihantar untuk tuition ataupun ada cara pengajaran yang lain, anak
Mhm.
itu pun boleh skor dalam bidang sains.
Dia bukan, kalau macam tuition tu dia bukan rawatan. Jadi kalau dia bukan
Dia bukan.
rawatan,
Ya,
jadi dia tak boleh dikira sebagai terapi tau. Sebab
ya.
memang ada benda yang macam bila kita gunakan pendekatan berbeza, penerimaan berbeza, kesan pun berbeza. Tapi selagi dia bukan rawatan, kita tak boleh katakan, ia adalah satu terapi. Lagi-lagi bukan sekadar apa kaedah yang digunakan, tetapi siapa yang memberikan perkhidmatan tu. Kita kena tengok adakah dia ada qualification ke tak, ada kelayakan, ada, apa bidang dia. Sebab,
Ya.
contoh kan kalau guru adalah pengajar. Bila
Ya.
guru melakukan aktiviti dalam kelas, walaupun, aktiviti tu sama dengan aktiviti yang dibuat oleh, contoh occupational therapist, dia masih tidak boleh dikira sebagai memberikan terapi kepada kanak-kanak tersebut. Sebab, um, memang kita boleh katakan aktiviti tu semestinya berfaedah, memberikan kemahiran yang lebih, memberikan latihan kepada anak tu, tapi, sebab kan, dia itulah saya kata, siapa yang memberikan, eee,
Ya.
perkhidmatan tu dan kesannya lah. Sebab of course kalau kita nak buat terapi tu sebenarnya memerlukan assessment, sebab terapi tu dia targeted kan. Dia macam you kena tahu apa you punya goal bila you buat terapi tu. It's not just about okay kita buatlah sebab nampak dekat dalam YouTube, untuk anak macam ni, oh parents, I mean ada terapis yang buat macam ni. So kita pun buat and then kita claim, oh saya buat terapi untuk anak saya. So it's not the same sebab dia tak spesifik kan.
Ya. So, um, in other words, it's a bit
Mhm.
like you have an assessment, you find an
Mhm.
area that belum perkembangannya belum mencapai matlamat ataupun
Mhm.
belum mencapai tahap kehidupan, tahap perkembangan yang betul dan
Mhm.
uh, dan itu didiagnose sebagai sesuatu kelemahan. So
Mhm.
bila ada kelemahan itu, terapi itu bertujuan untuk memberi intervensi yang perlu dan bila
Mhm.
beri intervensi yang perlu, dia ada satu tumpuan dan target. Dan dengan tumpuan dan target itu, uh, ahli terapi itu akan mempunyai satu assessment bila dia mulakan apakah kelemahan dan apakah tujuan terapi itu dan membuat satu plan bagaimana akan mencapai perkembangan itu. Itu adalah apa yang saya faham. So it's more targeted to say
Yep.
if let's say the level of comprehension is not according to the age appropriateness of a child. So a speech and language therapist can come in to identify what are the problems that the child has in understanding whether it is a lack of communication or whether it is not understanding certain more difficult parts of it, and then make a targeted therapy. Would that be correct, Didi? Betul?
Yes, sebab kan bila you explain macam tu, it shows that to be able to identify, nak pilih kaedah mana yang nak guna tu sendiri memerlukan pemahaman yang menyeluruh dalam bidang tu, yang
Ya.
mana kalau kita bukan dalam bidang tu, kita bukan juruterapi, kita pun tak akan dapat tahu apakah yang diperlukan untuk membantu, anak contohnya untuk menyelesaikanlah, di mana gap yang dia ada, apa defisit kemahiran yang dia ada ketika tu.
Okay. Desiree, how would you feel intervention is different from therapy?
Saya rasa dengan perkataan terapi ni, there is a different process and qualification needed in order to be a therapist. So inilah antara masalah kadang-kadang yang dihadapi oleh ibu bapa, especially those who baru saja dapat diagnosis anak mereka kan. And also the overuse of the word therapy lah. Saya akan terus kepada topik tersebut. Saya rasa the word therapy is overused. Similar to a lot of other words in the mental health capacity, words like depression, OCD, we tend to use them very loosely.
Anxiety.
Tetapi these are all clinical diagnosis sebenarnya. When you talk about depression, OCD, anxiety kan, there is a clinical diagnosis. Therefore, the word therapy ni kadang-kadang diguna oleh sesiapalah to sometimes unfortunately for business reasons, sebab when you use the word therapy memang dia lebih mahal. Sedikit ya.
Yes.
Not sedikit, banyak. Dia sangat mahal bila you use the word therapy. So tak semestinya sekiranya anak anda pergi ke kelas art atau kelas seni, it does not qualify as art therapy. Betul. Unless the person doing it is an art therapist. Kan? Begitu juga dengan speech therapy, occupational therapy, kan? There is a reason why they are called therapy, sebab mereka telah pergi dan mempelajari kaedah-kaedah dan cara-cara untuk membuat terapi tersebut dalam cara yang tidak akan mengancam or it will do more harm than good.
Because
to
now
the person.
now we even hear of music therapy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Kelas music dengan music therapy berlainan.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe Desiree jelaskan sikit apakah ciri-ciri yang parents out there bila nak assess adakah ini memang music therapy ataupun ini kelas music biasa, because we have heard parents who come back and said, I bayar mahal-mahal tapi anak saya yang neurotypical pun cara pengajaran dia sama je. So apa kebaikan untuk hantar untuk music therapy? Is this really something that is needed? So bagaimana Desiree?
Contohnya kalau specific to music therapy, setahu saya we have a music therapists association dekat Malaysia. Dan they are registered. So most music therapists are registered with this association. Boleh pergi ke website mereka dan check. Dan sekiranya, I don't know, maybe certain people just graduate ke apa, there's no harm in asking, are you actually a qualified music therapist? Tanya. Jangan rasa malu because it is your money you're spending, and also anak anda yang akan pergi untuk terapi atau kelas tersebut. So it is your right to ask. And also from the questions that you ask, boleh je gauge whether they are really therapists. Sebab saya pun pernah ada satu experience di mana seseorang itu datang ke rumah saya dan memang it's not entirely her fault. Saya pun tak tanya soalan-soalan yang tertentu pada masa tersebut. Saya difahamkan bahawa dia boleh membuat speech therapy, tetapi selepas beberapa kelas dengan cikgu ni, she's not even therapist, something didn't sit right with me lah, sebab cara penjelasan dia kepada saya tentang anak saya, it was more of her complaining. Like, saya suruh dia macam ni tapi dia tak boleh. Saya suruh dia macam ni tapi dia tak boleh. And to me, I'm like, you datang rumah I baru 3 kali je you cakap macam ni. But OT yang datang ke rumah saya dah 3 bulan, anak saya masih menangis for the full 1 hour. Dia tak complain macam ni.
Yeah.
So lepas tu saya cuba tanya this cikgu, sebenarnya what is your qualification? And she says she's a child psychologist. So lepas tu saya tanya kawan saya yang also a child psychologist, dan dia yang beritahu saya sebenarnya a child psychologist is not a trained speech therapist. Sebab speech therapy tu ada kaedahnya yang tersendiri.
Yeah, so they have a speech and language therapy course and even a degree yang membolehkan mereka mengajar atau mengendalikan speech therapy. And it's not just a basic degree. Mereka perlu bekerja certain number of hours either with stroke patients, either with children with speech delay, and then they get their accreditation. Sebab in the end what we learn in textbooks, kita semua kan boleh baca, Uncle Google ada, Auntie Yahoo ada, kita boleh baca. Tapi kalau nak implement that to a child or to a stroke patient who has lost their speech, memang perlu hands-on experience, because there's nothing better in life than to than to learn by experience, because that is what will teach you the most. Do you agree, Didi? Boleh?
Yep, betul.
Okay.
Sebab
Okay, so
yelah kita perlu ada pengalaman dan pengetahuan lah dalam satu bidang, dan kita selalunya bila ada qualification tu maksudnya you dah betul-betul belajar kan, you dah belajar, you dah buat you punya training, then only you are certified, you are qualified to be one. Setakat kita yang baca ni, and then kita yang ada anak seorang dua, like even for myself kan, I ada anak dua orang yang neurodivergent pun same diagnosis but they are totally different. So kalau kita nak ikut orang yang bukan, yang tak qualified, tak sama lah dia punya depth and then dia punya advice, dia punya assessment pun. So yeah, it's important lah to check the credential of the therapist.
So I'm saying this because one of the conversations I had with one mom was, she said she went for speech therapy because there was a suspicion that her child may be on the spectrum. And then the first place that they went to, they did the speech therapy for like one block 12 sessions, and they didn't see much much improvement, and she said her fault also was she didn't sit in to those therapies. So towards the end, she sat in and she thought, hey, this is stuff I do at home with the child. And then tergerak hati dia untuk maybe switch to another speech therapist, which she did. And lo and behold, in just 3 sessions, it was not speech delay, but it was selective mutism. Tapi sebab, you know, as a mum, sebab dia tahu anak dia tu tidak bertutur dengan lancar, you know, has a problem with speech. So to her, okay, let's start on speech therapy sementara menunggu appointment untuk berjumpa dengan doktor pakar. Sebab kan appointment dengan doktor pakar pun lama nowadays.
Yes.
So lama kan. So this was one of the conversations that we had. So bila ada selective mutism, and itu adalah diagnosis oleh speech therapist yang kedua, yang memang bertauliah, berkelayakan, dan telah cakap, no madam, your child can speak. You know, we have to investigate as to why there is selective mutism. Is there some sort of trauma? Is it
Anxiety,
convenient? Yeah. Because then the diagnosis becomes totally different.
Betul. So ini adalah salah satu contoh red flag dalam terapi. Sekiranya terapis tersebut atau cikgu ke siapa melarang ibu bapa daripada memerhati sesi tersebut, itu adalah salah satu red flag utama ya. By right, especially with speech therapy, sebab saya pun have been through many speech therapies yang tak berjaya and then yang berjaya juga, and the ones that are most effective is when I'm invited to be part of the session. Sebab kebanyakan terapi ni, whether it's speech or occupational therapy, kita kena praktis dekat rumah juga dengan anak, because speech therapy is not something you can learn in 1 hour or 45 minutes. It is through daily interaction and things that you do daily. So sekiranya terapis tidak mengajak the primary caregiver masuk ke dalam sesi tersebut, bagaimana dia nak follow through?
Yeah. In fact, I have to acknowledge Nirv's first speech therapist gave me a book and introduced me to the Hennen method of it takes two to talk. Sebab komunikasi tu dua hala kan, bukan one way, and that opened a lot for me. Dan Dan daripada membaca buku itu, saya mempunyai soalan. So each time I used to go in, saya tanya balik. The book says this, but we're doing this. Why? So bila dia engage macam tu, ia menjadi satu pengalaman yang sangat menarik bagi caregiver, as a parent or care partner dengan therapist. Dan bila perkara itu berlaku, yang menjadi the biggest beneficiary is the child, because they have two invested parties who are working in tandem to get them to achieve the goals as set out.
Yeah.
So the other question that I've come across recently is, campak je anak ke dalam kelas yang biasa, with their peers dia boleh catch up sebab kan ada osmosis. So it was something that was told to me, and the parent actually said that this was something that was discussed at home, and ini adalah satu perkara yang orang tua kat rumah pun rasa, it's easy. Dulu you all pergi sekolah juga, you all pun belajar daripada kawan. So kalau ada kawan yang pandai, kawan yang boleh buat, pasti dia boleh buat. So tak payah pergi terapi yang mahal-mahal ni, masukkan ke dalam satu kelas yang inklusif. So Didi, if that was something a parent said to you, what would you say?
Dia kalau anak you boleh improve just by being among typical kids, you hantar pergi terapi, you tak payah sampai 10 session pun anak you dah improve. Sebab dalam terapi tu lagi intensif, lagi targeted. So kalau anak you memang sebenarnya dia maksudnya macam mana, dia punya masalah tu tak banyak dan dia boleh catch up, then dalam terapi dia akan thrive, then lagilah you boleh masukkan anak you dalam kelas mainstream. Tapi dalam banyak kes sebenarnya, bila kita masukkan anak ke kelas inklusif tanpa support yang cukup, tanpa ongoing therapy kan, ongoing support, dia boleh still lagi attending therapy despite going to inclusion punya setting, dia akan menyebabkan tekanan bukan sekadar kepada sistem, which is the school, the teachers, but to the child, to the child themselves lah. Sebab dia mungkin rasa terasing. Dan sebenarnya kanak-kanak ni daripada kecil lagi kita nampak macam dia tak kisah, dia tak faham, tapi sebenarnya dia dah rasa yang dia berbeza. Dia berbeza, and dari dulu, I think tak tahulah, mungkin beratus tahun hingga sekarang, bila ada seseorang tu berbeza, apa yang akan jadi ialah risiko untuk dibuli itu sangat tinggi. Sebab dalam grup dekat sekolah tu memang tak boleh lah kalau ada seorang berbeza. Kalau yang beza tu ya memang jadi sasaran mudah lah. Jadi apa-apa pun, kalau kita nak pilih sekolah, nak pilih setting, you nak masuk mainstream ke, nak masuk PPKI ke, nak masuk mana-mana tadika ke, taska ke, you should always prioritize their safety. Bila kata-kata safety, bukan sekadar fizikal, bukan sekadar security, whether dia boleh keluar ataupun compound tu selamat ke tak, tapi dari segi emosi jugalah. Macam mana pergaulan dia boleh berkawan tak dengan kanak-kanak lain pun didedahkan atau tidak dengan kelainan yang ada kepada kanak-kanak neurodivergent ni atau tidak. Sebab of course kita selalu fikir anak-anak ni perlukan social class, social skill class kan, tapi sebenarnya in fact saya pun pernah buat saya minta bantuan seorang speech therapist untuk datang ke sekolah anak saya, dan dia buat program untuk classmates anak-anak saya, supaya mereka juga didedahkan skills untuk berkawan dengan anak-anak saya. So sebenarnya banyak faktor lah yang kita perlu fikir. Kita tak boleh rasa macam masukkan je ke sekolah dan mereka akan mendapat skills tu secara macam kata osmosis kan. Dia boleh catch up, boleh ni. Sebab kalau boleh catch up daripada kecil lagi, dah umur 2 tahun dah boleh bercakap, sebab of course parents bercakap kan dekat rumah. Kalau dia tak ada masalah, dia dah boleh dah catch up. Dia boleh bercakap macam, yelah, that's the thing. You should be, uh, apa, kita should fikir panjang lah, look back kita punya experience, sama ada anak kita ni mempunyai gap kan, delay, mungkin delay ataupun mungkin neurodivergent, disebabkan oleh kekurangan pendedahan ataupun mempunyai neurodevelopmental issues lah. So kalau nak tahu macam mana, bukan kita boleh tengok sendiri, itu yang kita bawa anak kita pergi assessment.
Thank you, Didi. So Desiree, same question. What do you feel? And especially as a tuition teacher, boleh tak kalau kita campak je ke dalam kelas?
Okay, I'm just going to say it as it is. Clearly, parent ni is in denial. So first step is parent ni, saya rasa if I was in the situation, saya akan encourage lah parent ni, please read up a bit more about what this means for your family. Sekiranya anak anda lain sedikit, read out what it means for your family and for the child, kan? Dan memang setuju dengan semua yang Didi kata tadi. But to add, like you said, since I can also speak from the teacher perspective, kita kena fikirlah dari segi guru kelas tersebut. Sekiranya anak ni di dalam kelas aliran perdana, nisbah guru kepada pelajar pun lebih ramai. Kan? So bagaimana cikgu ni boleh cope tak? Number one. Number two, adakah cikgu ni diajar atau mempunyai pengetahuan untuk handle kanak-kanak yang neurodivergent? Dan sekiranya cikgu ni maybe tak boleh handle, it's not fair to them. Kan? It's not fair to them. And also dari segi persekitaran, sekiranya persekitaran tersebut tidak sesuai, there will be instances where the child is going to act out perhaps. We don't know whether there will be any aggressive behaviour, dan ini akan memberi satu tanggapan di antara anak-anak neurotypical yang lain bahawa semua anak seperti ni agresif. Semua anak seperti ni tidak boleh duduk dalam kelas aliran perdana. But the actual fact is, kanak-kanak ni belum diberi sokongan yang dia perlu. Maybe we don't know dah pergi terapi ke belum. There's a reason why certain schools make it compulsory for a neurodivergent child to have a shadow aid.
Betul.
Kan? Because this is the person who will be the pelapik lah antara cikgu dengan pelajar that needs the support and helps this child, like what Didi said, for socialization. We cannot expect the neurotypical kids also to know how to make friends with the neurodivergent kid. They need support too. Right?
And yes, and with the shadow aid, they can help you initiate conversation.
Yes.
And kalau tak bawa pensel, bagaimana nak ajak kawan untuk pinjamkan pensel? It's as basic as that.
Yep. Absolutely.
And then bila bawa extra tu untuk offer kepada kawan yang lain. Hey, I got extra pencil today. The other day you lent it to me. So here is one back for you. So neurotypical kids can do that quite easily. So just to wrap this point up. So kalau kepada yang mendengar, penonton-penonton, kalau jumpa parent yang perlukan anak mereka dapatkan assessment, mungkin boleh dengan cara yang Desiree sebut tadi, ajak mereka untuk membaca dengan lebih lanjut. To say, there are many different issues that children face today. There are so many options available. Why don't you go and read up? This might give you some ideas and give you an answer as to what your kid may be going through. If not, go and see a doctor. There's no harm. And if everything is good, everything is good. Isn't this the best feeling in the world, where you go and see a developmental pediatrician and the developmental pediatrician, he or she tells you everything's good with your child. Your child just needs this. Now, I think that's like really music to every parent's ears. Memang tak ada apa pun. I was just worried for nothing. Tapi kalau ada apa-apa yang perlu dikemukakan atau didapati daripada assessment itu, at least there is something that can be done.
Exactly.
Yeah. So on that note, we're going to take a short break and we'll be back again with Chit Chat Mak-Mak Anak Neurodivergent. Hello, selamat kembali ke episod ke-26. Hari ini kami tengah membincangkan berkenaan topik-topik yang sering kami dengar semasa kami berbincang dengan parent-parent yang lain. So before we went for the break, we were talking about getting the right support, and sometimes the therapy doesn't need to lead to a diagnosis. It is just an intervention. So Desiree, when does that happen?
Okay, so kadang-kala there's something called a provisional diagnosis di mana kami pernah membincangkan topik ni. I think anak Anit pun mendapat provisional diagnosis pada mula-mulanya ya. So kanak-kanak ni biasanya memerlukan intervensi terlebih dahulu sebelum mendapat diagnosis yang penuh. Dan sering kali saya juga mendapat soalan ni, sekiranya anak itu dikatakan oleh doktor perlukan speech therapy atau occupational therapy, adakah itu tanda bahawa memang anak tu autistik? Dan selalu berkata tak semestinya. Sebab there's a reason why probably the developmental pediatrician or clinical psychologist will say go for this first for X number of times and then come back to review. Sebab untuk mendapat diagnosis yang penuh berdasarkan DSM-5, Diagnostics and Statistics Manual version 5, dia ada kriteria dan checklist yang panjang. So kadang-kala bila checklist tu bagaikan borderline, they will not give the diagnosis immediately. So this is my reminder lah that number one, sekiranya anak dah masuk terapi, tak semestinya diperlukan untuk seumur hidup. Kadang-kala boleh di-discharge, right? And the diagnosis, they might still need a diagnosis, tetapi maybe therapy yang kurang. Right? And even when you discharge from therapy, kadang-kala it doesn't mean dia tak perlukannya seumur hayat. So it's very much on a case-to-case basis lah.
And I think it also depends on what the child is doing. So kadang-kadang bila nak masuk sekolah tu memang dah capai tahap yang diperlukan. Dan daripada tahap yang dicapai, the child can take it on. You know, you've given them wings and then they fly and they don't come back. But otherwise, the wings, I would like to use an analogy, the wings sometimes get injured. So they need a bit more healing and a bit more therapy to allow them to heal and to put them back on track. And that would be something that happens, because you see that even with dyspraxia, or like I remember one mom said that she realized something was not right when the child went for dance class. And the child used to love to dance at home. But when going into a dance class and among a group, the child just couldn't do what was expected and then couldn't be part of the group. But after a while, when they went for movement therapy, which was more targeted, they realized it was more of a confidence issue. And then with that therapy, after about 6 sessions, they went back into the group, and then it was okay. So then the question was, is my child autistic that I had to do that? And my answer was, maybe it was just the intervention needed. So in such a scenario, Didi, what would be your reaction? Sebab it happens. So again, you know, it's a question of a dance class and then movement therapy. So similarly, just now when we said art class and then art therapy, music class and music therapy.
That's the thing. Tu yang cakap, bila suatu aktiviti tu rasa nampak macam sama macam apa yang dilakukan oleh juruterapi dalam session, tapi bila dibuat oleh contoh guru di sekolah ataupun kita sebagai ibu di rumah, ia menjadi latihan lah. Tapi tak semestinya akan memberi impact yang betul, yang betul-betul kita mahukan, sebab goal kita tak sama macam yang dibuat oleh expert lah. Bila expert, dia tahulah kan, dia boleh nampak, boleh faham, okey, dekat mana masalah, apa yang perlu ditambah, apa yang perlu difokuskan. So dia macam ni, ada aktiviti yang boleh kita buat, yang boleh buat kita rasa lebih baik. Kita panggil dia macam therapeutic. It's therapeutic. It makes us feel good. Tapi it's not a therapy, because dia bukan rawatan kan. Feeling better is not necessarily satu rawatan, but
Yeah.
but doing things that make you feel good, make you feel better is not a therapy. Tapi sebab yelah, we've been using the word therapy loosely kan. Oh, terapi minda, terapi diri sendiri apa semua. That's why people like macam confused kan, kata oh, no need to go to specific therapy because like Desiree said, it will cost more kan, mahal. So
Yeah.
just
Per hour.
pergilah. Yeah, I think that's a contoh kan. Parents kalau macam Muslim akan cakap oh, hantar anak mengaji berapa ringgit untuk per hour. Tapi bila dia dengar harga per hour untuk terapi anak-anak neurodivergent ni, memang macam tak sanggup dengar lah kan, sebab 3 kali terapi macam yuran sebulan. In fact ada juga session macam contoh kan, Cik Amy sekarang attending art class. It's not art therapy, art class. The cost of art class for 8 hours per month is even less than 1 hour kalau therapy session punya cost.
Yeah.
So from the cost also you know the level of focus, the qualification of the person delivering the service. So if it makes you good, it's already like giving you impact. Mungkin you tak perlukan terapi. Tapi there are times that you just need a bit more. You just need a bit specific punya service lah, specific. Contoh kan, kalau kita exercise, sekarang Didi cakap pasal exercise kita exercise, kita boleh cakap kita exercise hari-hari, tapi sama tak dengan orang yang exercise dengan ada personal instructor,
Personal trainer,
kan? Personal trainer yang dia okay, hari ni kita target untuk tangan, hari ni target untuk is leg day, kaki. So of course it's different. So kita tak boleh samakan lah benda-benda ni. So, kita mak-mak ni nak senang cakap, look at the cost pun dah tahu dah. Tapi of course it's more than the financial value of it lah. It's more than that. Tapi having said that, you still need to be careful lah, because ada juga orang oversell their activities, their services when it's not a real therapy. You just like slap a brand, say that oh, this is therapy, this is good, and then like put a very high price. And kita parents yang desperate, yang macam nak cari yang terbaik untuk anak kita, may feel tertipu lah. So kan, itulah banyaklah nak kena fikir kan.
Betul, sebab kita nak yang terbaik untuk anak kita kan. Dan kalau ada seseorang yang put it out that they are the ones qualified and able to achieve these results, without sometimes checking their qualifications, we might just believe it and say, oh, let's try. But so Desiree, what if it doesn't work out? I know I'm asking this question because I remember I went through a conflict as well when I wanted to stop a certain therapy because it wasn't working out. The therapist and I were just not seeing the situation on the same wavelength. And I tried and I tried and I tried, but I kept telling myself that the therapist is the expert and I'm not. Until it came to a point when I was upset, and I was upset for having to pay because I felt that the child would need better. And I remember speaking to somebody saying, how do I terminate? And what do I say? What is there a formula? So I'm going to open this up first to Desiree and then to Didi, and then I'll come back with what happened to me.
Okay, so in this situation, saya rasa it will differ from case to case. Firstly is what is your relationship with the therapist kan? How close are you? Is it more formal? Is it more friendly? But I've also been in that situation. Contohnya bila Hans dapat diagnosis yang sangat awal kan, so umur dia 2 tahun. So memang sangat gelabah, start semua therapy at once, occupational therapy, speech. Tetapi with speech we struggle the most, and not till he was 6.5, 7 did we realize actually is apraxia of speech. So no matter how much of speech I had done, it would still continue to be a challenge. But of course at that time between the ages of 2 to 4, memang banyak therapists that came and went. And memang I went through that. Oh, speech therapy is not working, or this therapist is not working. So setiap kali perlu berhenti. There was some that it ended well, amicably, but some where it didn't end well. Therapist marah, right? Oh, why are you stopping? Do you want your child to remain like this forever? Kan? So the minute you say things like that to me, it makes it a bit easier lah for me to walk away, right? So that's one tip I can give. The minute they get personal, just walk away. No point engaging. But I came to a point where I completely stopped speech therapy for Hans sebab it was just too stressful for me. Dan bila sesuatu menjadi sangat stressful untuk kami sebagai penjaga utama yang bawa naik turun, sometimes the best option is to just let it go. Not forever, but for a while.
A break.
Take a break. And, and I think most of us are people of faith, right? The moment will come, the right moment will present itself to you. I truly believe. Tapi jangan stop semua sekali ya. Stop benda that is not working. Benda lain boleh berterusan. If the OT is working, the EIP is working, berterusan. Tetapi certain elements boleh je. Take a break for yourself. That's fine.
Didi, what would be your answer?
Well, kita yang bayar kan. So macam kalau tak happy, susahlah nak mengikhlaskan diri membawa anak pergi setiap kali kalau kita tak happy kan. So but I would try not to burn any bridges lah, sebab sometimes tak okay bukan sebab chemistry, mungkin macam contoh there were one time because of the logistic, and then ada juga sebab timing, ada juga sebab kita nakkan intensity yang lebih, so cari kat tempat lain. So we'll try not to burn bridges, so that yelah macam I masa aktif dengan Autism Malaysia kan, banyak buat program. So I will reach out to all the therapists that I had been working with kan dengan my children. So kita still ada good connection, good relationship, walaupun dah tak pergi tempat tu lagi. So kalau memanglah kadang-kadang kita rasa macam we have to come up with alasan, so that macam tak nampak sangat macam I just don't like you. Tak nak macam tu, because kita kan orang Asia yang sangat bersopan santun kan. Tapi berhemah kan, we try not to sound rude,
offend
ataupun
people. Yes.
kan kita tak nak offend people, kita tak nak marah-marah. Tapi for me sebenarnya kita tak payah fikirkan benda tu sebagai satu yang personal. So kalau you tak nak hantar itu, kita cakap lah, I just want to try something different. Kita kadang-kadang overthinking tau. Kita takut nak kecilkan hati terapis tu lah. Plus sebenarnya macam it's business for them, business for us. Ini bukan, it's not that they are giving charity to our children kan. So kita perlu bayar every session. So of course kita nak session yang not just the best for our children, yang paling suitable, but of course that suit our life. So sometimes it's not because of the therapy tu therapy tu bagus ke tak bagus. It's not just that. It's not just whether it's working or not, but other things lah, dari segi timing, dari segi location, dari segi what is happening in the family life as well. So those banyak faktor. So di sini saya nak nasihatkan kepada therapist and kepada parents, especially therapist lah, tak payah nak kecil hati kalau parents keluarkan anak pergi hantar lain, sebab banyak reason. Tak payah nak push. You can ask. Of course you can ask, is there anything that you can do better? What are the reason? Tapi kalau the parents choose not to share, then it's okay, because it can be something really personal. And for all we know, the decision nak pull out your children tu sebenarnya not an easy decision. For all we know, the parents cannot afford it anymore.
Yes.
Betul tak? Because it can be expensive. It is expensive in Malaysia if we are talking about private services, right? So be kind to yourself. If you have to do it, don't just macam korek tabung jugalah, sebab kita dah ada commitment, kita dah hantar every week. So just be kind to yourself, and to therapists also, don't take things personally. And because this we are in the situation which is not easy. And kalau ada dekat sini yang bukan dari kalangan parents neurodivergent, let me tell you that the amount of money that need to be spent on therapy alone, you guys will be shocked. Macam
Yes.
perlu ke nak spend? And of course, we got these questions even from grandmothers as well. Like, are you sure you're spending this much on your children? But we just have to. Macam selagi kita mampu kan, kalau ada kan, kita pun tahu. I don't know about you guys punya religion, but in Islam we believe that every children come with their own rezeki.
Oh
So
yes.
selagi
Yes.
mampu tu kan, this is their rezeki. Sometimes I would joke. I cakap apa tau, kalau kalau anak every time kita bayar, especially dekat Oasis Place kan, bayar monthly punya ni kan, session kan. Kalau tak bayar ni, I would have driven BMW now.
Oh,
Tapi
betul.
tapi kita pun tak tahu tau. Sebenarnya kalau kita tak spend on therapy, duit tu akan ada ke? Kita akan dapat ke rezeki tu? Betul tak? Because it's already fated, dah tertulis, it belongs to them. It's for their development, for their education, for their therapy. So, kan?
My grandmother used to say, and I say this with utmost sincerity, because she said in our faith, and she used to tell me this: we give birth to the child, but we don't give them their journey and their karma. That is for them to guide, and we are passengers in their journey. So investing in a child and giving them the best possible opportunities is your duty as a parent. Selagi mampu. I'm not saying go and gadai this, gadai that for therapy. I know people who do that, and memang mahal. Tetapi kita buat apa yang mampu, apa yang boleh kita buat. And we, like I was told, professional therapists, when you give them a reason and you say, I'm giving notice and we would just like to take a break or stop, they don't get offended, because that is part and parcel of their occupation. Because no therapy is for life. There's always an expiry date.
Yeah.
Right? So I was told this, and I think that sat well with me, because at that point I didn't know. I always say this. My child has taught me so many life skills that I would have never had if I didn't have a neurodivergent child.
Yeah.
And this is one of those.
Yeah. And if I could add one more thing about choosing to stop a certain therapy, and I think a lot of us know this, that certain places slots are extremely limited.
Yes.
And even the professionals that can do it are very limited, especially speech therapists in this country. So if you make that conscious decision to stop for whatever reason, it is actually opening up a slot for another child
Exactly.
who may be in need, or the parents have already saved X amount of money and can suddenly afford it. I know parents who do that. They have a target. Okay, I've saved 1 year worth of therapy, and then they start. So don't feel bad if you have to stop. It might be opening up the slot for someone else.
Yes, and that might be the hikmah and the goodness that you are passing on.
Yep.
So that's one issue. Now, to move on to the next one, how do you deal with things that happen within the therapy session? So not the one-on-one therapies, but this is something I encountered myself, and it took me some time, and the Kita family ladies know that I was quite conflicted, emotional when I first heard about it, but now I'm ready to talk about it. So in a group session that Nirav is in, he encountered a form of something not very nice that was said to him.
Okay.
And he was told by another neurodivergent child that his mum said not to be friends with Nirav because Nirav was autistic. Nirav shut down. He didn't tell me anything about it, but the group coordinator did. And I have to say that it took a lot of me to be completely calm, and then I had to put on my lawyer hat for a while and say, what's the most fair thing to do in the situation? But like, how would you react if such a thing happened to you? Start with Desiree.
Wow, this is really a tough one. I know I've had time to think of this answer, but I think in that situation, I would not be able to put on any other hat but the mom hat, and probably get a bit upset and defensive first, but perhaps I may have asked for a dialogue with the mom face to face, or even through an intermediary. So maybe with the therapist who's conducting the session, right? I believe it's a social group, right?
Yes.
So maybe a mediated session between the parents to actually find out the reason behind it. I mean, I know the details of this story where you and Nirav are concerned, but I'm just saying it for the benefit of others. If this is a situation and if it's an option, have a mediated session, because sometimes we don't know what conversation actually took place between that mother and the child. Is the child being too literal because he's autistic as well, or was the mother taken out of context? So sort of giving the benefit of the doubt first, right? So I think that is one thing that can be done, a mediated session between the parents.
Thanks, Didi. Macam mana?
Of course, firstly, I would check on my own child, like how is she feeling, dia okay ke tak, what she thinks about it, and then if she has any suggestion of how to move forward, because ada sometimes I rasa macam especially on my eldest child kan, dia macam tak nak I masuk campur dalam dia punya apa, macam dekat sekolah ke apa ke, dia tak nak kita interfere macam tu. So of course I would discuss with her, and then at the same time tanya jugalah kan dekat the coordinator or the teacher what really happened, because of course there were like incident in the past as well dekat sekolah while she was in KL, where ada budak-budak yang apa, bukan, not just pulaukan, like said bad things towards her, and she was like very upset. um I did not go and jumpa the parents lah, but the teacher told me what are the action that she had taken, and what was the result of that the action. So I think we will see how much we can interfere, because um if tak perlu mungkin tak masuk, because we can't be there for them
All the time.
every time, all the time kan. So it's case to case basis lah, like we see also. So macam kena tengok lah the teacher, the coordinator tu apa dia punya action, dan dia punya plan. And as I said before, the most important thing is the well-being of our own children lah, dia okey ke tak. In fact kalau macam dia pun rasa upset, dia pun nak apa, memang nak away from that pun, we respect lah, and see what are other options that we have. Kalau macam dah tak nak join group tu ke, nak cari group baru ke. Because sebenarnya uh, it happened one time where my daughter said like a bad thing to another boy, which is also autistic, and it was like a while only my friend, the mother of the boy kan, told me that, oh, I don't want to worry you, but I just want to tell you that a few weeks ago when the children met, that my daughter actually said something really bad to him, because at that time my daughter, dia face macam, oh, I don't like boys. So that's why dia tercakap benda yang tak sepatutnya lah. And because they are not from the same school, they don't go to the same school or whatever, so dah tak ada opportunity sangat lah nak jumpa. So I just apologize, and I also tanya balik lah dekat my daughter, oh, you said that, and then like tell her that you should not have said that, it's not nice, and then ask her to apologize. But of course tak lah macam pergi jumpa budak tu, but send some notes to the mother, said okay, like sorry for saying that apa semua, because it's apa, kita pun tak boleh nak control kan. Yalah, anak kita yang autistik pun ada masa pun akan buat something yang tak sepatutnya juga. So
Betul.
macam contoh my other daughter, a few days ago in fact, she had a tantrum lah during art class. So I know she must been screaming loud because the teacher asked me to pick her up immediately, which I did lah. And then the moment she stepped into the car, dengan mata dia dah bengkak, swollen, dia kata, "Mama, I'm so sorry. I regret it." And then I asked, "Did you say anything to your teacher?" "Oh, I said sorry." "And then how about your classmate?" And she said, "Yeah, I said sorry to her as well." Um, and then later my husband tanya, "Oh, did I apologize to the teacher?" And then I said, "No, no, no. Amy, she already minta maaf because it's from it's based on case to
Yep.
case lah kan. So because dia dah minta
I
maaf
agree.
and it's not something that I planned. I did not like send her, oh, you know what, today you can throw tantrum in class. I
Yeah,
did not plan.
exactly.
So, yeah,
Exactly.
and then
You didn't cross
knowing
that.
that, yeah, and knowing that she already apologized, so I think it's good enough. It's good enough.
Yep.
So
Betul.
that is the level of kita punya not interference. How do you say kita punya
Parenting,
involvement.
our
Support.
Involvement.
our parenting support. Yes.
Parenting support. Yeah, parenting support. So we really have to look at uh, case to case and make sure that kita tak menyebabkan keadaan menjadi lebih ni lah, lebih sukar, lebih besar. So yeah.
So similarly for me, I had to. That's why I said put on my lawyer hat and ask myself questions
Mm.
like, now he's a teen or a young adult. Do I interfere?
Mm.
And like you, Didi, I went to check on him first. But he said to me, he blanked and went very quiet because it has happened to him in school before, and things that I didn't know, right? So
Mm.
he's not something that he's faced for the first time. And I guess if he was younger, as parenting support, I would have gone in and intervened. I would have asked. But in this case, because he said, "Oh, we would settle it among ourselves," with the other boy, and he did say sorry, mommy. So let's give him a chance. That was how it was settled. It was good, but I think I had to deal with my emotions of being maybe a little bit more protective of him than I would have been of a neurotypical child. But again, as you said, it can happen either way. He could have done something to somebody else, which he did once in school, I remember. And I made him, I didn't reach out to the parent, but I made him draw a sorry card and go and apologize to that friend. And the mom reached out to me after that. And I never met her before to say thank you. And it wasn't necessary, but it meant a lot. It meant that he was acknowledging his actions. And I think that is in a way something that I tell most parents that I meet. The level of intervention it depends on the amount of support the child needs, and as you rightfully said, Didi, as they grow up, we need to give them the ability to say yes, we'll allow you to handle it and not interfere too much, because then they also feel that, hey, I handled it and I said sorry. It didn't take mama to go and say sorry for me.
Mm.
and
Mm.
and and on that note, I think we have had a good session. Thank you very much for joining us on this chit chat mak anak neurodivergent. And if you like it, please let us have your feedback. Then we can have more of this. If you have situations that you have encountered that you would like us to discuss, please reach out to us. Please let us know. Hantar email, hantar DM kat social media. Again, we are on YouTube, Spotify, and also on Instagram and Facebook. Please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if there's any topic you'd like us to discuss in a situation like this, please let us know. And we at Kita Family will be very happy to discuss it. Any last words from you, Didi?
Kita nak spend banyak duit kan on therapy selalunya. So make sure that you get the right therapy. Jangan yang sebarangan lah. Like make sure that you get it from a real expert, not just especially apa yang tadi I did discuss with Desri, parent yang tiba-tiba turn into consultant. Like without
Ah,
qualification kan, tiba-tiba je nak
yes.
charge. So I think be careful because um, me having two neurodivergent children pun rasa macam lain kan approach. So kalau you ada ramai anak pun, approach anak untuk anak you dengan approach untuk anak orang lain mana nak sama. So
Betul.
be careful lah, be careful on where your precious money going to be spent on. And also kalau yang pergi pergi terapi di hospital kerajaan tu, make sure you don't miss your appointments because those lagi precious kan, susah nak dapat. And teruskan sabar dan support anak-anak kita.
And Desiree?
I'm going to echo what Didi said. There's no one size fits all. Every parent is different. Every child is different. Every situation is different. Hari ini kami berkongsi berdasarkan experience kami.
Yes.
Kan, tetapi situasinya berbeza. And I really want to give a special shout out to Anit for sharing your story today. And I know I speak also on behalf of Nori and SK who couldn't be here today with us. We are all, including Didi, I'm sure, very proud of you and Nirav and how you handled that situation.
Thank you. I just also want to say that I was also able to handle it because I had a space, a safe space like Kita Family. And my Kita Family actually really supported me through it. And when I was saying this is the way, this is how I feel and I cannot function, they were there around me, supporting me. And that's how it helped me get through it. And that was also one of the inspirations as to why we said, kita kena discuss, kita kena galakkan orang lain yang mempunyai situasi yang sama untuk bersuara dan untuk discuss dengan kami ataupun orang lain bagaimana cara-cara untuk menyelesaikan situasi yang akan mereka hadapi. Kerana ini adalah matlamat kami di Kita Family. So just because we are in Kita Family doesn't mean that we don't go through these things.
Absolutely.
So we all have our challenges and we want to learn from them and we want to share the outcomes. And similarly, we would love to hear your sharing.
Yes.
On that note, thank you very much for joining us. Please like, share and subscribe. We want to have more views on YouTube and on Spotify. And if you like our snippets as well, please share our snippets on Instagram, Facebook, and wherever you are, even on TikTok.
Yes.
And we hope to see you soon. Jumpa lagi. Terima kasih.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.